If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. By now, you probably heard the phrase AI so much you wish that they would just find a way to get rid of it, but it's not going away, though there are some people who think that black demands are going to go away. The overarching white media message about AI is that it's a threat to the working classes, and there is certainly a lot of merit to that, but not for the reasons the white media is giving you. This persistent narrative of AI being the predominant threat to the non-white tech elites seems that it's ultimately meant to overshadow social and political demands being made by the black grassroots. And that's something that I think is on the periphery that we need to go ahead and be aware of now so that we can go ahead and tackle it early. Who has control of AI? That's the main question. Who's creating it and who's making the majority of AI systems? Is that black people? If this technology is going to be changing the way that we live, then the question becomes, who's deciding how we're going to live then? While there are going to be those who claim that there's going to be all kinds of benefits that come from AI, let's get real here. AI is a sophisticated form of control in that it's presenting what's going to be deemed an existential crisis. That's how the white media is using it. And there's a lot of reason for that. They're not doing it to do you any favors. They're not doing it to stick up for you or, oh, we're giving a warning about it. No. The reason that they're pushing that AI is an existential crisis is no different than what Dr. King said about the Vietnam War and its impact on racial justice. A big distraction. Because people are looking at AI and deciding, man, this is putting people out of work. Actually, it hasn't yet, but it's probably most likely going to. And what they're saying is we got bigger things to worry about. And that's the message that's being pushed at us. You people have to stop advocating for yourselves. You have to stop making demands because the threat over there is just too big. We have far bigger problems than yours. Meanwhile, everybody else is still making their demands regardless. Don't you see that where black people are concerned, it always works out that way? It doesn't matter if it's the Vietnam War, the war on terror, AI, or the Terminator. They're always telling us there's always some big baddie that we need to be quiet about. Some say that AI is a bubble. Others that it's here to stay. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. AI is a branding term to an extent, but it's also turning out to be the wet dream of a bunch of techno-oligarchs. And there is danger in that for black people in particular, because when you look at people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and others, these card-carrying racists, these are the guys who are putting all of that money into that stuff, and they're the ones who want to decide where this is going to go. The white media are the ones who push the lie that these tech bros, they don't really have an ideology, certainly not where race is concerned. Why, the only thing that these guys are concerned about are their little digital gadgets and toys that they come up with. Oh, and at most they might be concerned just about making money, but nothing else. They certainly don't have any biases or what have you. And yet we found out what the real truth is, what it's always been. This is about digital discrimination. That's the point that they actually want to reach. That's the reason why every time you look up, we hear about some racist scandal in these companies, and it doesn't matter if it's Tesla or Facebook. It's always the same denials, the same empty attempts to try to dismiss the issue. And yet, with all the concerns that are being voiced even in the white media, the political establishment doesn't seem to be bothered by any of this at all. Now, the reason that these guys are so interested in trying to computerize everything is so that they can oppress us more efficiently. And when we confront them about these issues, what they're going to do is they're going to claim, well, it's not us, it's the computer you see. The AI is to blame. It certainly can't be anything we did. That's the direction that they want to go in. We've already seen this in a number of cases already, like with facial recognition. Imagine if you gave that kind of thing to law enforcement. Yeah, we're just rounding up all the black people by mistake, but don't blame us. You can't sue the department. After all, we farmed this out to an AI. The same way that these white supremacists try to bestow artificial legitimacy on themselves, they'll print some articles basically saying, oh, we have forgiven ourselves for all the wrong that we've done. This is the digital equivalent of that. They're trying to give themselves permission to say, well, all of those concerns and demands that black people have been voicing, that stuff is all old hat. We're in a new world now, one where all of those old complaints don't even matter. Well, at least the complaints from black people don't matter. Nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy, family, and artificial intelligence is definitely no exception. These AI systems are not creating themselves, nor are they programming or training themselves. This is the reason why the racist punks at Doge are a sign of the times. Elon Musk's little science experiments running around. These guys are the kind of racist trash who are working in these Silicon Valley firms and elsewhere making these AI systems. These racist punks, they're the ones who are actually in these rooms deciding what these things are going to be used for. They're the ones programming them. They're the ones giving them their training data, and they're the ones who are deciding how it's going to be used against us. Recognize when people are trying to play a form of political taekwondo with you. They're trying to take momentum that you build up and use it against you. And that's the reason why these guys have a vested interest in going ahead and saying, yeah, AI, oh, it's definitely disruptive, isn't it? And people are very concerned. Yeah, because they already know how they're going to go ahead and quash that particular narrative when the time comes. They'll claim, oh, well, it was all about nothing now that black people have been permanently put in their place, or so they hope. But talking about how AI can and will be used against black people, in fact, it's already been used in the past, that's a conversation that doesn't feature, and it needs to. You look at some of the things that have been done in war zones, like, say, in the Middle East. Using computer systems to target people on behalf of oppressive regimes isn't new at all. You can go all the way back to the 1980s with computer systems like Promise, which was used for espionage. Not surprisingly, Silicon Valley has been up to their eyeballs on all of this from the very beginning. Just for example, Google and Amazon provide cloud computing and AI services to the Israeli military under Project Nimbus, a $1.2 billion contract signed in 2021 when Israel first tested out its in-house AI-powered targeting systems. The military has used Cisco and Dell server farms or data centers. Red Hat, an independent IBM subsidiary, also has provided cloud computing technology to the Israeli military, and Palantir Technologies, a Microsoft partner in U.S. defense contracts, has a strategic partnership providing AI systems to help Israel's war efforts. And keep in mind that police departments all over America, including sheriff's departments and state troopers battalions, they happen to work with the Israelis to come up with new and inventive ways on how they're going to control black people. All of these people work hand in hand. No matter how much these people may bicker amongst themselves or even have wars against each other, where black people are concerned, they always seem able to put aside their differences and come together to do some dirt against us. And you can tell that the memo went out about the right way to report on things like this because the agenda-setting media are all on code and using the same language. From the New York Times to the Aryan propagandist, the Associated Press, the white media has been downplaying the profound significance of how AI has been used in the war in Gaza. And they use that term concerns. Oh, people are concerned. There's been concerns. Yeah, they're sitting here talking about concerns so they don't have to say panic. We all know that tyrannical regimes, like the one we live under, try out their new killing tech on the battlefield before inevitably bringing it stateside to use against us. People didn't even know that police had drones or that they had already been using them to deliver explosives until the death of Micah Johnson in Dallas. Most people were amused and delighted when they saw Boston Dynamics dancing robots, but for everybody else who actually has a brain, they started realizing, hey, companies like Boston Dynamics, they work with the military and they're always trying to find new and inventive ways to seek out new military contracts, new military uses for their technology. But when it comes to the public, that's not the way that they present it to us. When Boston Dynamics started posting their dancing robot videos on YouTube, everyone was being sold the line that, well, these robots, they're intended for things like industrial purposes, or they might be for military purposes over on the other side of the world. And some of the more gullible breathed a sigh of relief, right up until they found out that the first people who are going to be buying these things are police departments. These things aren't being deployed on some foreign battlefield. They're being used right here in the U.S. Now, at this point, people claim that these robots are for the bomb squad, but as we saw in Dallas, it doesn't take much imagination to figure out that they'll be using them to target and kill black citizens. That's the entire point. Getting the robots to go ahead and take the risks. In fact, you got these state legislatures that are already trying to pass laws that are going to expedite this process. In liberal New York State, they've proposed a law earlier this year that makes it a crime for citizens to arm robot dogs with weapons. But of course, it's totally legal for the police to do so. Now think about that. If you got the police who are running around using their little murder bots to kill people, if somebody says to themselves, I'm going to have one of these things for, say, home protection, for my own protection. They're saying in New York State, we would like to make that illegal if we can. They haven't passed the law yet, but they're working on it. One of Boston Dynamics' senior executives was in New York showing off their robots, and when he was asked about whether or not this proposed law would have an exception for the police to have weaponized robots, he said yes, quote, "These are operations that protect public safety, and they are conducted by experienced officials. That's why they're outside the scope of this legislation." And just so you know, the Boston Dynamics representative who said that is a vice president of policy and government relations. Policy indeed, except in this case, he's not talking about corporate policy, he's talking about public policy that's going to be enforced and enjoined upon you. See, what most black folks don't know is that most of the laws in the United States are actually written by corporations. Why do you think Congress is constantly in session, constantly talking about bills and regulations? It's because these corporations spend all day, every day, having their lawyers draw up some new legislation that's going to be advantageous to these corporations, and then they hand these legislative proposals to their paid political whores, who then pass them into law. Meanwhile, the citizens can't even get their phone calls returned, but corporations can walk right into the halls of power and brag to the media that of course there's an exception for the thugs in blue to these laws. When we helped craft these laws, we made sure they would be outside the scope of this legislation. Interesting how these corporate vice presidents talk just like these lawmakers do, using the same verbiage. But then again, why not? The corporations have been running this country longer than the politicians have. Defense industrial companies working with the military and developers testing new robot safety measures would fall outside the ban, they say. Bomb squads would also still be able to use weaponized machines for training, bomb disposal, and emergencies. Law enforcement can also still use them on private property or for surveillance if they get a warrant. And law enforcement officials would also have to publicly report on their use of such robots. Now, how much you want to bet that's the kind of thing that'll actually fall out of the legislation before it gets passed? The lawmakers in New York have already gotten comfortable with the idea that the thugs in blue can put their armed robots on your private property, or that they can surveil you using these same armed robots. Just so long as they get a judge to say they can do it first, right? But as we saw with Breonna Taylor and countless other examples, these racist judges will sign off on any warrant, even if they know that it's blatantly illegal, even if they know that the police are lying, as they did with the no-knock warrant for Breonna Taylor. And just like with Breonna Taylor, the cops would love it that instead of them having to do their own dirty work, well, why don't we go ahead and send one of our gun-toting robots instead? They can go ahead and shoot the place up, and best of all, none of us has to risk anything for these illegal warrants and these illegal raids. As far as the police in these municipalities are concerned, using robots to kill black citizens could be a very good way for them to get past the whole thing about qualified immunity, because black people already shut that one down. So it's a matter of we got to move on to something else, keep the scam going a little bit longer. Now, that law that's been proposed in New York State, it's still in the early stages, but this is what's going on in what the white right claims to be such a liberal state. Right now, there's no talk about these robots being tied to any AI systems yet. But then again, there doesn't have to be. The same way people didn't know about the Pig Patrol in Dallas arming drones with explosives is the same way the public won't know that these robots are going to be carrying out armed patrol duties depending on where the AI tells them to go. And of course, the line that we'll be getting is, this is far better. After all, there can be a police presence everywhere. And one more thing. With AI and robotics bringing a convergence between the direct operations of the military and the police, don't be surprised if you find out that a lot of these robots that are out there are not being controlled by the police at all. They're being controlled by some corporate, civilian, quote-unquote, organization. You see, the same way that drone operators in the military are in a remote location, sometimes they're not even in the same country as the place where their drones are carrying out airstrikes. It's the same way that exact same thing could happen when it comes to so-called police duties with these robots. In many cases, the people who carry out drone operations in the military are civilians. Did you know that? Now, the predictable standard line from the military is that, well, we don't let these civilian contractors carry out airstrikes. They're just limited to surveillance, and they're prohibited from actually firing weapons. But does anyone actually believe that? We should all know what the civilian contractors, i.e. mercenaries, were doing in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and they weren't just doing surveillance. Using robots and AI gives them exactly the kind of wiggle room and the kind of gray zone, quote unquote, that they would love to go ahead and carry out large-scale killings of black people and say, well, we're not sure what the case law would be exactly. After all, it's not as if it was a person who did it, it was the robot, don't you see? And just like these corporations make some device or some machine that malfunctions, they say, and kills people, they'll be claiming, well, it's some sort of engineering flaw or some sort of design defect. That must be what it is, but nobody's going to go to jail for it. Because all of you niggers with all of your protests and all of your demonstrations and all of your demands, you guys made it where the police basically have effectively lost qualified immunity for the most part. At least it's been pierced successfully. But now we're going to go ahead and have some technology here, and you're not going to be able to do that with the technology, at least not right away. And besides, there's going to be so many layers behind it. You don't know if it's the police department controlling these things, or some person working for a corporation, or an AI, which isn't even human at all. But it's going to have human beings that created it and programmed it and are constantly updating it on what they want it to do. So understand, we're facing a sophisticated enemy, but their tactics and their goals are simple. To dominate us through violence in order to maintain their racial supremacy. Once you get past the chatter about AI data centers and large language models and all the other techno-babble that only serves to tell you how their technology oppresses us, when you get past the jargon, you see that the agenda and the methodology is no different than it's ever been. The goal hasn't changed at all. What they're doing with all of this talk about AI as a threat, they're trying to dangle a shiny object in front of you and me and telling us that it's the most important thing in the world. Oh, the threat is real, you better believe it. So it's more important than you people's trivial demands. That doesn't even matter anymore. The world has moved beyond that. You people gotta get with the times or you'll be left behind. Never mind, the white supremacy has been all about making sure that black people are never allowed to keep pace with anyone else. Our position in the world has been forced upon us. It's actually artificial, just as artificial as the intelligence that they use. But the damage that it does and the lives that it ruins, that is very real. I'm all for learning technology, but I'm old enough to remember when they were talking about so-called new economy jobs back in the 1990s, by which they meant computer-related fields. It sounded sexy, but then people found out that those tech companies were hiring people in India and China to work for them because people in India and China could learn how to code, and they were willing to work for far less money. Learn to code became a mantra from 20 years ago, and that used to be good advice, but these corporations weren't trying to make jobs. They were only trying to make money for the executives at the top. Now it's at the point where about the only actual jobs and technology that you think you can rely on has to do with IT. Anything that actually has to do with the person who has to physically interact with a piece of equipment. That's basically what it is. Because these AI systems are not actually able to pull any server racks, and they're not able to actually get in there with a flashlight and try to see what's wrong, at least not yet. And I'm not saying that there's no purpose in learning how to code. What I'm saying is, with AI, there's concerns that the coding jobs aren't going to be safe anywhere. Why? Because these AI systems are being taught how to code. While these are problems for the working class, the reality is that it does us no good to fight techno-feudalism when nobody's dealing with the fact that our position is not the result of artificial intelligence, rather the result of genuine racism. These white supremacists have shown time and again that they'll shut some of their own people out for a while, but eventually they'll go ahead and throw them some crumbs to keep them toeing the line. And they'll do it because that's been the pattern since at least Bacon's Rebellion. The white people who are not the elites, which is most of them, they'll get angry with the white people who are the elites. They'll make some noise, and then they'll get some crumbs and go back to business as usual. People know full well that there's a violently enforced racial pyramid in this country, and they're fine with it, and they'll fight to enforce it so long as they feel they're getting something out of it. You better believe that a large number of these so-called white leftists and others who are sitting here in hysterics about AI and the damage that it's going to do, what they're actually doing is a political bank shot. They're pretending as if, oh, it's all about the AI you see and the existential crisis that it represents. But what they're also thinking is, and finally we can go ahead and bring an end to all of these demands you Negroes have been making. We don't have to hear that stuff anymore. When people say that artificial intelligence is a threat to everyone, to me it sounds like all these people who every election cycle say, you black folks can't be making all of these demands for reparations and an anti-black hate crime law. That's too dangerous. Can't you see the threat from fill in the blank? You people gotta stop and just do as you're told. Are there things to be feared about AI? Sure, just like there are things to be feared about the Orange Man. But the people who are trying to tell you that you need to stop making demands, they're not concerned about the threat. What they're concerned about is what they're scared of is you and your demands. How many times have we fallen for that old saw only to find out that the people who told us about the threat were playing us the whole time? After they get what they want, they go and make common cause with the very threat that they told us to be afraid of. After all, where is Silicon Valley located? San Francisco, the allegedly most liberal city in America to hear the white right tell it. And yet all those so-called California liberals, from Nancy Pelosi to Gavin Newsom to Kamala Harris to low-down Willie Brown to Karen Bass, have spent their entire lives building up the Elon Musks and the Googles and the Facebooks and the Microsofts and the other AI giants who are causing this mess. They were the ones who did the most to make the world safe for the very AI threats that all of these other activists and such are talking about. These white billionaires are making their demands, and nobody's ever telling them that they can't have it unless they do something about the way their AI ventures are threatening the livelihoods and the futures of so many people. Nobody's telling them no more government money, no more government contracts until you guys fix this. And none of the people who are up in arms about the threat from AI are saying anything about that either. They seem to be fine with the politicians sitting on their hands. So family, let's make sure that we're not fooled. If people try to come along and claim that AI is going to change everything, it doesn't change our position in the society. And as far as white supremacy goes, it changes nothing because they're the ones who made these AI systems. They're certainly the ones who control them. And no, just because AI might put some people out of a job does not mean that our demands, such as reparations or an anti-black hate crime law or to punish the thugs in blue or any of the other constellation of tangibles that we require, is somehow less important or we moved on to other subjects. These other people can say that, but we aren't. We're not moving on from anything. And sure, you'll have the people out there who are going to be saying, but AI is a problem. Well, it can certainly be problematic. That is definitely beyond dispute. But I think for those of us over here in the black grassroots, we figured out a long time ago that as with so many other things, the remedy to AI is be one. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Ronald Waits, Ronald Williams, Fidel Phillips, Gavin Andrade, and Kiko Hayes. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.